Well, let's do the virtual hug. Good morning. Back in 1930, a man had a hot dog stand along a busy road, and he just developed a great following. People would, pull into the hot dog stand, get their hot dogs. He'd often come out and just hand it to people through the car window for the people he knew, and put up some signs down on the road so people would know as they come up the hot dog stand was there. Things were going real great. He was a relatively simple man, but he and his wife kind of kept this hot dog stand going, and he was excited because his son was coming home for the summer from college and would be able to help. And the son came home, and the son was kind of like, what are you doing? Don't you know that there's been an economic downturn? There's a recession. I mean, people are preparing for the fact that there isn't going to be any business anymore. And his dad was kind of, wow. Well, my son's gone to college. He knows these kinds of things. I guess I should just cancel my orders for hot dog buns and hot dogs and close up the shop and the hot dog stand and take the signs off the road. And the following week he said to his son, "Boy, you're right, son. The business just went through the floor." As many of you know, I strive to give you a relevant, practical, and usable spiritual tools, each Sunday. And as I've observed these last few weeks, especially with the unemployment numbers just soaring, it's I couldn't help but notice. It's like, well, did business stop before these people were laid off? It's like, no. What happened was people assumed that business was going to drop off, so they just started to lay off people or fire people. And like you, these last 3 weeks have just been challenging for me. I heard one woman say, I've looked at this as a great opportunity for me, to spend some good quality time at home, take care of the things I've always wanted to take care of. And 5 hours later, I thought to myself, why am I sitting in the shower eating chocolate ice cream? We're all just doing our best to cope with the situation. And there's this deluge of news coming in, and so much of it is just aggravating, about who did what and who didn't do the other thing. And it just, there are times you just have to just shut it all off and just remember that, hey, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And we can ground this energy rather than feeling like we need to take on the outrage. There's just been this cascade of horror stories. And of course, talk of recession. I had to look up, okay, what's the difference between a recession and a depression? It turns out a recession is when you've gone 6 months and the gross domestic product is going down, the output. And if it lasts for more than 18 months, then you can start calling it a depression, because it just seems to be ongoing. And one of the bizarre things about what we're experiencing right now is, of course, when you compare it to, say, like 1929, we have this pandemic come, and we recognize, because of our unpreparedness, the best way to stop the hospitals from getting overwhelmed with people was to we all shelter in place, stay home, stop. And of course, this virus is just so different than any other virus that we've dealt with before. All of the old, guidelines just kind of went out the window. It's like, as people realize, it's not just a matter of touching or well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, we find, lately that this virus, we can pass it on just by breathing on each other. And that never seemed to be the case with most of the stuff we had before. But recessions are a collective consciousness sort of thing. And so in Unity, we talk about the human race consciousness, the sense that we have this collective consciousness of our thoughts, our feelings. And as we put more and more positive thoughts into that, more thoughts of the fact that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, we can raise this entire human race consciousness. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And that's why I wanted to talk about how to live a recession-proof life. It sounds outrageous, but it is possible. And that's what we're going to explore in this morning's lesson. There are many Bible stories of people overcoming insurmountable odds or situations. And the basic premise is that you need to just let go of what it is you're observing before you and embrace the spiritual truth. You need to place your faith in God rather than in physical world supply. In the 91st Psalm, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, who abides in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to Jehovah, my fortress and my refuge, my God in whom I trust. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 fall at your right hand, but it will not come near you. Because you have made Jehovah your refuge, the Most High your habitation. No evil shall befall you, no scourge will come near your tent. So what is the Most High? The Most High is being willing to change our state of mind, our attitude about things, our perception of what is happening. Recessions are a group project, and as such, we as individuals can opt out. How do we do that? Well, that's what we're getting to. Recessions don't happen to us, they happen through us. As I mentioned before, it's like, well, if everybody expects that everything should shut down, things shut down. This morning I want to focus on a spiritual concept called divine substance. Divine substance. I didn't get it at first. It took me years before I really was able to grasp what divine substance was about. So if you find yourself this morning, it's kind of like, I don't get it, don't worry about that. What you want to do is take it into your meditation in the coming weeks and get a sense of what this divine substance is about. Because, like I say, today and these next 3 weeks, I'm going to talk about what do we need to do to have a recession-proof life. And understanding substance is kind of that cornerstone of it. All matter is comprised of vibrating molecules and atoms. And for decades, scientists have been trying to find that smallest particle, that thing that one scientist coined as the God particle. You know, if everything is made of God, well, then where's that little particle that starts with God? And of course, back in 2012, there were all of these stories that had come out about how the scientists had discovered through experiments in physics that there is this thing that they nicknamed the Higgs boson particle, also known as the God particle. And I got a kick out of the description in the one news story. The one scientist says, it's weird. It's like we can't see it, but we can kind of see its shadow. And Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who started the Unity movement back in the 1890s, when Charles started talking about this divine substance, the point was you can't see it because it's the underlying energy that forms all things. And this energy can be manipulated by our mind. This underlying energy can congeal into the things that we want to see manifest in the world. So why is that important? Well, we can manifest substance into matter using our imagination and our prayers. Let me give you an example. Have you ever been outside when there's a rainstorm coming on? You can kind of feel it, you can sense it. There is no rain, but it's like it's going to rain. There's like a humidity in the air. There's that thing that becomes precipitation, and then suddenly it starts to rain. And not only does it rain, but it can rain enough to flood the streets. And you're like, well, wait a minute, where was all this rain a moment ago? I didn't see it, but here it is. So that's sort of what divine substance is kind of like. We can't see it, but we can sense that it's coming. Our minds are connected to the divine mind. And I've talked often about the divine idea. We open our minds to the divine mind, the divine ideas are downloaded. We take it into our intuition, and we can kind of sense which are the right ones for us to embrace, which divine ideas to embrace. Then we have the understanding of our mind, which takes it into our imagination. We start to see what it is we want to see manifest in the world, and then our thoughts and feelings come up with the plan, what it is that we need to do, and also recognize what we don't need to do to make these things happen in the world. This is why we resonate with this idea of magic or wizardry, the Harry Potter stories and movies. It probably won't happen instantaneously, and it's not about using magic words. It's about using our imagination and seeing this thing unfold. It may unfold in a few minutes, it may unfold in a few years. But the point is we recognize what it is we want to demonstrate in the world. Think about a time that you witnessed or you heard about answered prayer. In unity, we avoid begging some God apart from us to manifest these things. Instead, we have, in our imagination, we actually see it happening. We know what's happening. We feel it's happening. That's the way unity prays. But with these various stories about answered prayer, someone having a miraculous healing, or someone having a miraculous demonstration, or suddenly, after years of searching for that perfect someone, you find that someone. And you might say, well, wait a minute, Bob. We have a worldwide pandemic. People are losing their jobs. Relationships are strained. There's a lack of money. Congress just poured $2 trillion in the economy. Economists are saying we need $14 trillion. This is the critical point where we have to say, whoa, stop. I see what you're seeing, but I'm not going to identify with it. I'm not going to pour my identity into aligning with that energy and with that fear. Remember that whatever we focus on expands. So do we choose to go along with the crowd, or do we choose to opt out? Do I choose to wring my hands? Do I choose to accept the forecast that hundreds of thousands of people are going to die? Or do I choose to pray for healing, for treatments, for vaccine, seeing the virus affecting less people, and the people it does affect, seeing it be more mild? These are the kinds of things we can put into the human race consciousness, especially after these last 3 or 4 weeks of hearing just the opposite. And of course, there's the concept of being in this world but not of it. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. We can create this human experience for our own individual lives, but also as a human race. So before you reject the idea, why don't you give it a shot first? I know before I discovered unity, I would have said, yeah, you guys are nuts, walk away from it. But suddenly we start to see that things can happen. Our prayers can work. Well, one person might say, well, we need to be realistic, or hey, you have to face reality. Each individual has a worldview and is perceiving a different take on reality. So is it the end of the world, or is it the beginning of a new age? Recessions don't happen to us, they happen through us. So the importance of perceiving the news versus knowing the truth. Yes, we have each come into this world to play this game of life. We've come to some agreements on what we're going to collectively experience, but we have our spiritual task sheet of what we've chosen to take care of in this particular lifetime, what it is we need to learn, what it is we need to teach, what it is we need to do, what it is we need not do, what it is we need to say, what it is not to say in a particular situation. So if recessions happen through us, we also recognize that God doesn't happen to us, God happens through us. If we're spiritual beings having a human experience and we're connected with each other, we can change what it is we're experiencing. Beliefs held in mind create after their kind. Many of you are familiar with Marianne Williamson, she's a great teacher of the Course in Miracles, which is very much in alignment with what unity teaches and divine science and religious science. She was running for president, of course, and last year there was a hurricane threatening the East Coast, and she posted that what we all need to do is just pray, seeing the hurricane veer off to the northeast into the Atlantic Ocean and not affect the eastern coast. And as you know, our own congregant Sam Esser points out, people were chastising her and laughing her and telling her she's nuts. But while all of that was happening, a group of people scattered all over this country prayed to see that hurricane veer to the northeast. And what happened? The hurricane veered to the northeast and did not ravage the east coast as people were predicting it would. So what are the other things that people are predicting that you can change? People scoff at Unity's prosperity principles. And of course, I just finished last Sunday a 7-week series on the Keys to the Kingdom course. And you can find it right there on the Facebook page that you're looking at right now. And the criticism usually comes, oh, you're just into materialism. You want to manifest cars. You want to manifest houses and money. And it's like, no. What we choose to do is to express our own gifts, passions, and talents, and to know that we have the resources for that to happen and for all of our needs to be taken care of. It's the attitude that's the important thing. We know the truth that there is enough and more than enough building materials to build a nice home for everybody. More than enough food to feed everybody in the world. But we've come up with these ridiculous structural concepts of like, okay, we got to put all this in the storehouse, and yeah, okay, you need to earn your food. you need to work hard and give us the money to have the food. So wait a minute here. We can come up with different constructs. And maybe this is the beginning of that new age, rethinking how we've been doing things for hundreds of years. Jesus taught us to stop looking for the kingdom of God in the future, behind us, somewhere else in the world. He says the kingdom of God is at hand, meaning it's available to us right here, right now, because we are a part of it. We are a part of this creative energy, this divine substance that forms all things. Divine substance is congealed into our own bodies that we're expressing through. So let go of the thought that you're on the outside looking in, because you're already on the inside. So as you look out, what do you want to see happen? And if you think you're on the outside looking in, then you're thwarting that will of God. That will of God is that each of us are a cell in the body of something much larger than us. And we've come into this collective experience of the physical world. So each of us has something special that we can give. Whatever your creative energy is, whatever it is you love to do, whatever it is that you do so well. Just be willing to do that to serve other people. We've parked our egos at the door and be willing to help other people. One of the ironies of being a spiritual being, having a human experience, is when we take our minds off of getting and instead turn it into, what am I going to give to the world? That's when things happen. The Gospel of Luke, 12th chapter, 31st verse, Jesus says, instead seek God's kingdom, and these things will be yours as well. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. I mentioned Charles and Myrtle earlier. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore started the Unity movement in 1889, when Myrtle was able to heal herself of tuberculosis when there was no medical cure. And as they started to develop a following, they started sending out a weekly newsletter and a monthly magazine, and Charles, being a wise businessman, decided, we need to get our own printing presses. And so they got a building, and they bought the printing presses to start printing this stuff. And like so many business people discover early on, there isn't that much revenue coming in. And so Charles was behind on the payments for the printing presses. And sure enough, one day one of the sheriff's deputies there in Jackson County showed up, saying we need to repossess the printing presses. And Charles, knew the deputy. He said, he says, I've got a rich father who's going to take care of this. And the deputy said, well, okay, but if he doesn't come through soon, we're going to have to repossess these things. And then Charles kind of went into meditation and realized, whoa, wait a minute here. Here I've been looking at the numbers of the revenue that's coming in and getting scared rather than recognizing, I can have that divine substance form into what it is I read right now. And what I need is some money. I want to see some money to pay the bills. And sure enough, in the next couple of weeks, the money was there. He was able to make the payments. So know with certainty that you have the ability to use God's substance to create what it is you need in the world. Each of us is like a faucet of this divine substance. It actually pours through us. So is your faucet open? And when you go to your faucet with a cup, when you put it underneath the faucet, is your cup upside down or right side up? Because if we take that attitude of fear, it's going to be upside down, and we're not going to be able to take that substance into what it is we need. Say a good cold drink of water sometimes. So we help ourselves when we first help other people. So understand that if we're holding visions and beliefs of plagues, starvation, and lack, we will continue to add to that problem. We will continue to create that in our experience. And this is why we have to be honest with ourselves. What are our assumptions? What are our beliefs? What is our worldview? If we can use our gifts, passions, and talents to make this world a better place, we can see this world as expressing health. We can see ourselves doing what it is we need to do to make this world a better place and being remunerated for it. We can see the relationships that are healthy and enriching to us, whether they're co-workers or that one special person in our lives. We can see the money that we need flowing into our lives so that we can pay the bills that we need to pay. And we can see that closer walk with God that so many of us talk about, that sense of really having a growing awareness that we're a spiritual being having a human experience. So how are you going to form this substance? The world will never be the same as it was. But we know this because that's the way it's always been. The world is changing. Things happen. Shifts happen in our attitudes. So let's know that regardless of our circumstances, that divine substance is always there. Always within us, always outside of us, and always there for us to use our imagination and our prayers to form the things that it is we need to do. So let's take a look at this week's takeaways. Duncan's going to put it up on the screen, and you can find these on the Unity of Tampa Facebook page. Just scroll down a little bit. So number one, let's perceive the news, but let's know the truth. Let's recognize that we can opt out of recession thinking. God doesn't happen to us, God happens through us. We use our gifts, passions, and talents to make this world a better place. We recognize that divine substance is everywhere, and that our minds can change this substance into matter. We visualize our preferred outcome, and then we pray. And we pray by see it happening now. We're going to close with a 2.5-minute video by Steve Hartman of the CBS Evening News.
They are some of the best classical musicians in the country. But at one recent performance by the Handel and Haydn Society in Boston, the most memorable moment didn't come from anyone on stage at Symphony Hall. It came from the audience, right at the very end of Mozart's Masonic funeral music. Listen. Did you hear that? Someone yelled, "Wow!" and it resonated, not just in this hall, but throughout the classical music community. It was just such a departure from typical audience protocol, which is why the president of the Handel and Haydn Society was absolutely thrilled. I was like,
That's fantastic.
This is David Sneed.
And also there's a sense of wonder in that wow. You can really hear it on tape. He was like, this was amazing.
David was so smitten by the outburst, as was the audience, that he decided to try to find the voice responsible.
But who was that? Because he really touched my life in a way that I'll never forget. This reminds me a little bit of Cinderella. You're trying to find somebody who's at the ball, but you have no way to find them. So they had email back then. Huh? You wrote to everybody in the audience,
And eventually, that email found its way to concert-goer Stephen Madden.
We did dash out like we were turning into pumpkins.
Stephen was there with his 9-year-old grandson, Ronan. Ronan is the one who shouted wow, which surprised Stephen more than anyone.
Because he just doesn't do that. Usually he's in the world by himself.
Ronan is autistic and considered nonverbal. But clearly, music may be a wormhole into his heart and mind. As a thank you, David arranged for a private cello performance for Ronan. But Ronan's family says all thanks should go to David and the Handel and Haydn musicians who made that moment possible. They say just hearing Ronan's reaction, after being told for years he might never engage. What more can you say but thank you? And wow.
What do you think?
Steve Hartman on the road in Boston.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'm grateful for our music team, because I learned many years ago that music reaches the heart and soul at a different angle than spoken word does. Closing Bible verse from the Gospel of Luke, 12th chapter, 31st verse. Seek God's kingdom, and these things will be yours as well. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. May you always be open to God's guidance and grace. Let's prepare for meditation.